Hey everyone, it's Dave here. So, surprisingly, Marvel Ultimate Alliance has found its way over to PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, and today we've got the PlayStation 4 version we're looking at. We've heard kind of mixed things about the conversions. The PC version is supposed to be quite buggy, and console performance is, well, it's not supposed to be great. So, what exactly are we looking at conversion-wise? Well, to be honest, it's kind of a straight port to PlayStation 4 with a variable frame rate. So, in terms of details, we're looking at 1080p on PS4, 720p on PlayStation 3. But really the thing that stands out the most when playing these games is the frame rate. On PlayStation 3 we're generally looking at between 20 and 30 FPS, but for the most part it's a 20 frames per second game, with occasional sustained periods at 30 FPS in less demanding scenes. Now on PlayStation 4 we are looking at an improvement here. Frame rates veer between 30 and 40 FPS, however it's not consistent. So generally we're looking at around sort of the mid to low 30s and then up to around 40 FPS in less demanding scenes. And there is of course times where it goes just under 30 frames per second in sort of more action heavy moments. The game can also reach 60 frames per second, just like you see here, but this is very rare. In areas where there's not that much geometry detail, we do see a 60 FPS lock for short periods, but ultimately this is generally not the way the game plays. It's a 30 to 40 FPS title for extended periods. And on that note, it's really disappointing. The problem here is lack of consistency. Look at the frame time graph and we're seeing spikes up and down, and this basically means that there's a lot of judder on screen when there's lateral movement, and the controls tend to vary a lot. Now, in terms of impact on gameplay, it's not too bad in this case. You know, you can get away with just mashing the buttons and playing through Ultimate Alliance, but ultimately it's the consistency that hurts the experience overall. We're just not looking at a smoothed, polished release here. Arguably, judging by the metrics on offer, the easiest solution is simply to cap frame rates at 30 FPS. This would go a long way to solving those problems and giving us an experience that is, well, serviceable. But ideally with this kind of game, we'd really be looking for a 60 FPS update here. So performance leaves a lot to be desired, but how does the game hold up in general? Well, from a visual perspective, we're obviously looking at 1080p on PS4 versus 720p on PS3. And that's where the bulk of the upgrades lie. The extra pixel count does add a lot more clarity to the scene, so fine details in the artwork are more noticeable. But beyond that, improvements are limited. The effects work in terms of smoke, particles and lighting is the same here. The only difference that we can perhaps see on occasion is shadow quality, and that looks a bit more refined on PlayStation 4. Beyond that, environment details are given a slight boost on PlayStation 4, so you can see additional normal maps and slightly more in the way of fine detailed geometry, but overall it's not a massive upgrade. That said, this isn't the first time we've been able to play Marvel Ultimate Alliance on console in 1080p. No, you can actually do it on the PlayStation 3 version, and when comparing the PS4 version to that, we can see just how close they really are. Looking closely, and the differences mainly lie with anti-aliasing. On PlayStation 3 the game is running in 1080p with no AA, whereas on PlayStation 4 we've got what looks like a post-process solution in effect, and that gives us a slightly smoother full HD image. Of course, playing the game in 1080p on PS3 is another story. Now, if you have your PS3 console set to 1080p on the dashboard, Ultimate Alliance will default to this mode. In order to play the game in 720, you'll need to manually untick 1080p in the display settings menu. But what's the damage? Well, quite a lot. Frame rates are generally about 5 FPS slower. That means sustained 15 FPS in 1080p versus 20 FPS in 720p, or in less demanding scenes we're looking at around 20 FPS in 1080 versus 30 in 720. Either way, the results are pretty clear. Playing the game in 1080p on PS3 simply is not a good idea, and ultimately the whole experience is quite disorienting. It's just about playable, yes, but it's not something we can ever recommend, and in this case it's definitely worth choosing 720p and the higher frame rate. So that's where we're at right now. The PlayStation 4 version does at least give us a tangible upgrade over the PS3 edition, but it's not really an ideal one. If the developers can cap the frame rate at 30 FPS, then things will be a lot better, but the experience isn't where we want it to be right now. Anyway, that's the PlayStation 4 version. We'll be taking a look at the Xbox One and PC edition shortly, but that's all I've got for you guys today. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give us a like, and remember to subscribe if you'd like to support Digital Foundry. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.